Good morning to everyone joining us today. I hope you are enjoying the second day of the 8th Africa Summit. I am thrilled to welcome you to our session today on building sustainable farmer aggregation models. Just how hard or easy is it? What is needed? My name is Rachel Wangare, a manager with the business consulting and research team at Intellecap, and I will be your moderator for the session. Allow me to share some basic housekeeping rules to ensure the session runs smoothly. So one, kindly requesting that you keep your audio on mute. Please utilize the chat box for the questions. I will pick the questions and share them with the speakers towards the end of the panel discussions. Connect through the chat box and take the conversations forward on Brella. Now, just to set a bit of context on why this conversation and actionable steps from the same is important. Globally, the food supply demand gap is widening. By 2050, 10 billion people will need to be fed, with the food demand expected to increase anywhere between 59% to 98% by then. To achieve this, agriculture markets and the food systems need to be reshaped. Farmers worldwide will need to increase crop production, either by increasing the amount of agricultural lands to grow crops or by enhancing productivity on existing agricultural lands through efficient use of inputs, irrigation, and adopting new methods like precision farming. This cannot, however, be achieved without deliberate solutions and strategies to solve smallholder farmer challenges. Aggregation of farmers under formal institutional structures has been one of the oldest strategies to address smallholder farmer problems. These collective institutions have potential to bring economies of scale to smallholder farmers and can lead to reduction of risks, costs, and improvement of net incomes for them. Those of us who grew up in the rural areas know the power that farmer organizations hold in livelihoods of the communities. These organizations, however, face many practical challenges in realizing their full potential, ranging from institutional governance, financial, operational, and strategic. Development of robust and sustainable farmer aggregation models has been an ongoing effort across the global South. These efforts have come a long way with innovative business models emerging to achieve the promise of farmer aggregation. The variations of these innovations in the global South present an opportunity for cross-learning and transfer of knowledge among the actors operating in these geographies. One thing, however, clearly stands: making markets work for the smallholder farmers requires a holistic value chain approach that incorporates access to inputs, markets, finance, technology, and advisory services, both at the aggregation level. This session thus seeks to delve on two key areas: sharing of learning on building sustainable farmer aggregation models from experts operating across several countries in the global South, looking at what works and what doesn't. And secondly, to identify emerging opportunities for the private sector and development partners in building a thriving ecosystem for farmer aggregation models. It is my honor to introduce you to our 5 incredible speakers, experts in agri-value chains development, agri-financing, institutional building of farmer organizations, partnership building, among others across India and Africa. The first speaker that I would like to introduce is Mr. Anil Kumar, founder and CEO of Samunati Financial Intermediation Limited, India. Anil is a career banker with over 28 years of experience in the areas of rural, retail, and agri-banking, and has worked with some of the biggest banks in India. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Mr. Stephen Mushiri. He's the CEO of Eastern Africa Farmers Federation, headquartered in Kenya. He has more than 16 years of experience in agribusiness, commodity value chains management, and rural development. Thirdly is Mr. Amar Kawash, who is the head Smallholder Agriculture Market Support Unit and Farm to Market Alliance Coordinator at the World Food Programme in Rwanda. He has over 12 years international experience in agriculture value chain development. Fourthly, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ande Okiror. He's the Regional Program Officer at Sasakawa Africa Association based in Ethiopia. He has over 15 years of experience in agribusiness, agricultural extension services, and designing of business development models. And last, but most certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Mr. George Osure, who is the Regional Director, Syngenta Foundation East Africa, with over 30 years of experience in implementing initiatives and projects targeting to improve smallholder farmer livelihoods. Now that I have introduced the speakers, it will be great to hear from them about the work they are doing with farmer aggregation and what type of aggregation models they are supporting or have encountered in their work. Keeping your responses to 2 minutes or less, I will ask Andy from Sasakawa Africa Association to start us off with a brief about Sasakawa Foundation work with farmer aggregation. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you very much. My name is Andy Okiror. I work for Sasakawa Africa Association. Sasakawa is an NGO which was established in 1986 by Dr. Norman Bonham, the winner of the Green Revolution, all of you know him, His Excellency Jimmy Carter, the former president of the US, and Mr. Roichi Sasakawa. Sasakawa, we work across the value chain, and we have got a driving word that says, take it to the farmer, which were the last words from Dr. Norman Bonham. Sasakawa, we operate across the whole value chain, from production, post-harvest handling, business, and then marketing. We operate in Ethiopia, Nigeria, Mali, Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Mozambique, Ghana, Burkina Faso, Benin, and Sierra Leone. On the production arm, we basically help our farmers to produce using models. We have got what we call the FLP, that is the Farmer Learning Platform, where farmers are trained on production. After our farmers have produced, we do the post-harvest handling. That means we want to make sure that we have good quality going to the market. And after that, we link farmers to the market. We work also with the banks. We work with big aggregators, big companies, agro-processors. We do all that to make sure that good quality and quantity enters the market. Then we have got the MEG, which is learning, monitoring, learning, and sharing. We are evidence-based organization. Whatever we do, there must be evidence, and we have got a head for that. And then we have got HR, that is human resource, where we work with universities to make sure that the biggest gap in Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa is limited access to extension. You will see most of the Sub-Saharan Africa, the extension worker ratio is between one extension worker to 2,500 to 3,000. In fact, in other countries, even 5,000. So what are we doing at Sasakawa is to work with universities and making sure that we are training extension agents such that they are able to produce more extension workers, they are able to reach farmers. So that is one of the things that we do. And we have been working with FBOs quite for long, building sustainable FBOs. We call them economically viable, where they are able to make sure that they are legal and they are able to take their own business like sustainability arm. That is what we do at Sasakawa. Our headquarters is in Tokyo, Japan, and also Atlanta, and the regional headquarters is in Africa, in Ethiopia. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Ande. Moving on to Amar, it would be great to know what WFP is doing in terms of farmer aggregation.
Thanks to Rachel, and thanks everybody for the warm welcome. Very happy to be here. As Rachel introduced, my name is Amar Kawash. I'm the head of the Smallholder Agriculture Market Support Unit at WFP Rwanda, but also the FTMA, Farm to Market Alliance Coordinator in Rwanda as well. And this is what I'll briefly introduce to you today. Farm to Market Alliance is a value chain development initiative, which if I had to summarize in one sentence, it would be to make markets work better for farmers. And by farmers here, we're really talking about smallholder farmers. This is a global initiative of 6 agri-focused organizations, of which Bayer, Syngenta, and Yara are 3 input providers, as well as RAC, and then 2 agri-focused organizations on the ground. We're operating in 4 countries currently, in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Zambia. I'm the Rwanda coordinator, so I'll tell you about our work here in Rwanda. But really our focus is on unlocking some of the key challenges that smallholder farmers face in the food value chains. And we do this by targeting 4 very interlinked and important areas. And those are access to predictable markets, access to affordable finance, access to technologies and quality inputs, and to handling and storage solutions. And in Rwanda, we're currently engaged with more than 88,000 smallholder farmers across 268 farmer cooperatives, working mainly in the maize and beans value chains. And what we do is we help link farmers more directly to some of the more formal private sector and public sector buyers, such as agro-processors, off-takers, and traders, in order to maximize the amount of money that goes into the farmer's pocket while not jeopardizing the commercial viability of the value chain as a whole. So what we're really trying to do, and through the collectivization, is encouraging farmers to, instead of selling by the kilo, is to sell by the tons. And that's why collectivization is very important in a country like Rwanda, where land holdings are extremely small. We're talking about an average of less than 1 acre per farmer. So that's us in a nutshell. Happy to continue this conversation and answer questions later. Thank you, Rachel.
Great. Thank you very much, Amar. I'll now move to Stephen. Stephen, if you could share a bit of information on what EAFF is doing. So as Stephen comes up, I can move to George.
Oh, well, thank you, Rachel, and thank you, fellow panelists. Very grateful for this invitation. I work for the Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture, which has a presence in Africa and in Kenya through Syngenta Foundation East Africa. In Africa, we have offices in Senegal, Mali, Nigeria, and Kenya being the biggest programs. And going across to Asia in India, Bangladesh, China, Indonesia, Myanmar. Our headquarters are in Basel in Switzerland. The Syngenta Foundation is an NGO, a development organization supported by the Syngenta Group, the business. And our mission is to support smallholder farmers through aspects such as technology transfer, which we'll talk quite a bit about here, policy initiatives, and so on. We have several work streams, and our operating work streams are research and development, seeds, insurance, agri-services, which is where we are right now, and some policy initiatives which link, for example, the regional economic blocks, ECOWAS and COMESA, East and South, and so on. Now, in our project areas, we have projects in Tanzania, we've had projects in Uganda, Malawi, right up to Zimbabwe, a big project running in Ethiopia. But most of our work is now based on value chains driven by crops and shared learnings through partnerships. So I'll discuss how the benefits of aggregation through the nodes within the value chains and the elements of the gross margin, very big words, but how those two interact and help our small-scale farmers. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you, George. Certainly eager to hear more on that. Stephen, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Stephen Mushiri. I work with the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation. We are a regional network of national farmer organizations and cooperatives in 10 countries. We are based out of Nairobi, but we cover the entire East Africa community, Congo, DRC, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Eritrea. So the formation of this federation is by smallholder farmers. There are 24 of those national entities representing more than 20 million farmers. So basically by virtue of our formation, we are actually an aggregation of aggregations. But however, we have gone a notch further and granulated that level of aggregation because by virtue of how we actually operate, we have a focus around ensuring farmers are benefiting more from profitable value chains, which actually means then that we actually have to aggregate the downstream where the farmers are and link them upstream, the upstream value chain actors, so that then they to input providers, to the market, and so forth. And so what we've done in that is that we have two levels. One, we either organize the farmers around value chains and organize what you call B2B meetings with potential off-takers or potential input providers. That has happened for the past couple of years. And then recently, we have gone a notch further by trying to digitize, build a digital platform, which then is able to provide even more information with respect to the farmers. Again, for the sole purpose of attracting more partnerships. In our platform, we're able to disaggregate farmers based on their location, their commodity, their gender, their age, the season, their input needs, and even what they're actually harvesting. So what then that means is that once we have that kind of data, we then try to convene the upstream actors. And by so doing, we've built several ecosystems around different value chains. The experience you've had with this is that it's a big challenge trying to organize farmers. It takes a lot of time. There are so many dynamics because we're not homogeneous in terms of capacity and setup, but I think those are discussions later today. But also there are dynamics along the upstream actors. They also have their own internal policies that may actually affect the dynamics of those ecosystems. Of course, it also requires a lot of trust building. For aggregation also to happen, we need to be very clear about your value proposition to all the actors who you're actually inviting to that ecosystem. I think from what we have seen so far, is actually quite attractive because of the economies of scale. You've actually seen that, by just putting farmers together, knowing that farmers are the rank highest in terms of the unbanked actors. They also, Aggregate also ranks lowest in terms of loan portfolio. Availing this particular data makes it very attractive to a lot of upstream actors. And this is by virtue of the fact that the countries we operate in are actually supported by agriculture. Agriculture is one that drives this particular economy. So I think as the questions come, I will discuss further about our experiences and some of the details around the various ecosystems we've been able to convene and work in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And now I'll move over to Anil, see whether you can bring in a different perspective from the India market.
Greetings to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining from. It's noon here in India. I'm joining from Chennai, the southern India. Wonderful to be with the fellow panelists. Given that my introduction is coming little later than the fellow panelists, all of that you have mentioned as what you are doing is something that Samunnati is attempting to do, is my realization. I just realized. We are a value chain enabler, working with the demand side of the value chain with a mission to make value chains operate at a higher equilibrium. In other words, the value chains that Samunnati is engaged in, how can we increase the throughput? And that increased throughput, how can we bring it to the production side of the value chain, represented by the smallholder farmers, aggregated into farmer-producer organizations. And there, the mission or the purpose for which Samunnati as an organization exists is to make markets work for smallholder farmers. So we are an entity, young organization, started 5 years ago, offering not only financial services, but also market linkages, and with an idea that an internal player approach in the agri-value chains is the best way to approach than being an external player, being a service provider of one set of services. That's what we do. And our products range from 1 day to 5 years. Quantum ranges from less than $100 to about $2 million. That's the range that we have. We leverage the social capital that exists between the smallholder farmers and the FPOs in an approach that we refer to as AMLA approach: aggregation, market linkage, and advisory services. The power of aggregation resulting into better purchases for the inputs in an aggregated demand, and better realization for the output in an aggregated way when you sell with a little bit of grading, sorting, and access into the markets, which is what Stephen beautifully explained as an federated FPOs. That's what we are doing, and all of it in a customized manner. We work with about 700 farmer collectives with their cumulative membership base of about 4 million smallholder farmers and offer technology and other capacity building services to them. So we have specific questions around our model, which we will pick up as we go through the questions. Thank you, and wonderful to share more information later.
Thank you very much, Anil, and thank you to all my other speakers. And it's amazing to see that all of you are taking a value chain approach in your solutioning to the farmer and the farmer aggregation models. So just a look at one of the challenges that has really faced the farmer aggregation models, and this is around sustainability. So we would like to explore the different perspectives that go into building sustainable farmer aggregation models, including strengthening the internal capacities, the market linkages element that most of you have alluded to, the financing and partnerships, as well as policy, and just get insights from yourselves on how you've seen this work, particularly around the areas that you've mentioned and the work that you've been doing. So starting with Andy, I know you did mention that you have a human resource team at Sasakawa. It would be great to understand how you're going about it. Just a bit of context on that question. So one of the challenges facing farm organizations is around poor governance and inadequate human resource capacities, and this has contributed to actually failure of most collectives. So just to understand from you how this can really be strengthened to ensure that internal capacities are not a key challenge facing farmer producer organizations.
You on the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you all the speakers. This is really a wide forum, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm basically going to talk in the context of Sasakawa. Sasakawa, like we said, is an agriculture organization. We are rated as one of the best extension organization in Africa. We were the first to start extension, and then we take it to the farmer. And now another slogan has come, the last mile to the farmer. So if you want to work with the last mile we want to work with the last farmers, you better come to Sasakawa because they are the last mile to the farmers. At Sasakawa, we have been working with farmer organizations for quite long and building their capacity. One thing I'm basically going to talk and giving examples of Sasakawa. One thing we do at Sasakawa is to strengthen farmers. You must ask them a number of questions. Why do they want to come together? What do they want? You have to know where they are and where you are taking them. So you do that because you want to make sure that farmers are able to stay together as a group. We all know that one thing we do as Sasakawa is joint enterprise selection. If farmers select enterprises jointly and they are built on that skill,
I wanted to call
then
you, of course, you know the session is 12, and you said you can attend, so I saw that.
Sorry, Andy. Jacob, if you could kindly mute. Go ahead, Andy. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. So we carry out joint enterprise selection, making sure that everyone contributes. If there's a stake from everyone to contribute towards an enterprise and building the skill around that, then we are seeing their internal capacities becoming very strong. And later on, they become really what they call economically sustainable. What we do at Sasakawa, we show the tangible benefits. If someone is working and is not seeing the benefit of building these capacities, then they will not be together. So we normally go straight and make sure that the benefits are translated at the household level. So what is it that they are benefiting at small householder level? Because that's what makes someone work, because I know there is something I'm getting at household. So we do that looking at the cost benefit analysis, the deliverance, the tangible benefits, additional organizational, all those mechanisms, we play with them to make sure that there is something that the farmers are benefiting. Market, we look at the market as a driving factor. We normally do market surveys at the beginning. So whatever we are telling farmers to produce as a market, just to mention a few, in Ethiopia, we work with cooperatives. It is a win-win. Before a cooperative works with Sasakawa, before we came in, we realized that cooperatives were operating at between 20 to 30% of their capacity. But after working with Sasakawa farmers, we are now hearing cooperatives operating at about 60, 70, 80% of their capacity. So we see that win-win bill because they are able to get skills that they are able to supply the products at the right quality and price to the cooperatives. In Nigeria, we've worked with big buyers like Olam. So all these may be in the rice farmers, Three Brothers. So we do that as a market pool. In Uganda, we have worked with breweries. So breweries originally used to import sorghum all the way from Australia, but after working with Sasakawa, they have seen that they no longer import sorghum. We stopped the importation of sorghum in Uganda. So all these farmers are able to build their internal structure because they are seeking skill and they are able to train even as a sustainability measure. When Sasakawa goes off, they are able to continue because there's a market pool. Using those farmer organizations as agents of change. When you tell someone you are an agent of change, you are also putting pressure on that someone. So a farmer organization is able to perform knowing that we are like the yardstick for others. So we use that and we are able to build the capacity of our farmer organizations such that they become agents of change. In most of the countries where we operate, we see other NGOs following Sasakawa from behind, taking over those organizations that are already, their skills have been built. So that means they are able to seek knowledge, they are able to relate, they are able to train others and impart skills within among themselves and to others because they are being seen as elements of change. At Sasakawa, we also do one-on-one training. We do not only train in groups. Sasakawa, we are, as I said, we are rated as the best extension organization in Africa. If you go to most of the areas where Sasakawa operates, even if we get one farmer in the field, we take you on. We ask you what is your challenge, what is your problem, the skill is built. In so doing, someone gets interested and is able to go and train others. We set demonstrations that are always on the highways and someone is able to ask questions within that demonstration, and in those demos, they have telephone contacts. So someone is able to call and build skill. So you find someone building in individual skill and as a group skill, and there's always diffusion of information going on. Most of the time we do our training at group level. Why do we go for groups? Because that is the easiest way to perform, that is the easiest way to spread the information within the community. And we have seen players like in areas where we operate, banks have gone into work with these groups because they are trained, they know what they are doing, they have done enterprise selection. They are also linked to the market. So the bank finds it easier to give money to that farmer group and the recoveries are easy. In so doing, there's a win-win. There is no physical collateral. They use what they call corporate social responsibility. The bank, they benefit from the bank. They also have social co-guarantee. So with that, the bank is able to give money using the social co-guarantee within the group, and the recovery measures are always very easy because you are recovering at the group level. And we have seen repayment rate as much as 95 to 99%. Even during the COVID, our groups did not suffer a lot. The banks were able to recover money and they were able to sell. So with that, we are able to build the internal skills and the mechanisms. We help interested farmers more or less achieve their potential. We ask them, where do you want to go? And with that, we are able to intervene at the lowest level, that is the household. And that helps farmers to move forward because they know the benefits are for my wife, they're for my children, and they're for the community. And the other thing we do what we call a needs assessment. When we do a needs assessment, we also look at the skills gap. When we look at the skills gap, we are able to pick out silent issues. That means impact the skill that the farmers need to use immediately. For example, there's been issues of the armyworm all over Africa. So we took that up and trained them on armyworm. There have been issues of market. There have been issues. So whatever issue that is identified that we know is a problem, we pick that up and that is the issue that we address immediately. In all the groups where we work, we make sure that the farmers have the clear vision, the mission, and where they want to go. A mission and a vision is what keeps you together. If you don't have a vision and a mission, then where are you going? So we make sure that we help our farmers to identify a clear vision, objectives, and that tones down to their activities. And that means they are able to work together, seek skills, build their capacity to address those issues. And that's how we have been able to move. We form associations, and with those associations, the farmers are able to work together. And this association now become autonomous, with or without Sasakawa. And we do not say once we have formed, they should only work with us. They have been able to seek market, they have been able to seek collective procurement of inputs. They have been able to do a number of things using these associations, which are very sustainable. And with that, they are able to share the burden. The issue within the groups is sharing burden. You'll find within the group, there are various actors and there are various people with skills. So with that, we try to say that all of you must play a pivotal role in your groups. If someone is good, you find retired bankers, you find agriculturists, you find students in groups. So if I'm an engineer, I should bring my skill in repairing the machines that are helping the groups in post-harvest. If I'm a food scientist, I should bring in the processing ability. If I'm good at marketing and networking, I should bring in the issue of making sure that the group is accessing market. So we do that, building the skills within the group and outside the group. And that means being flexible in delivering all this. All this, we do them at group level and we take them to the high level associations, the apex. And with that, we have been able to see the groups being funded, getting funding, even from FAO, from other big organizations. You said, not only with Sasakawa, our funding sometimes is very small. We get funding from the Nippon Foundation in Japan, but we are not able to reach all the farmers that we want. But with that, we are able to write other proposals. Other funders are able to fund the groups, both in kind and cash. So these, they are able to build their skill and make sure that they are cohesive and deliver across the whole value chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andy. And I was picking out a few insights as you were speaking. One on leveraging model farmers as change agents, delivering market-driven training and skills, and leveraging experts to bring in the required skills at the farmer and the aggregation level. So thank you very much for that. And I'll move over to Amar, and Andy did allude to some of these. One of the biggest bottlenecks for sustainability of the collectives is the forward linkages aspects, the upstream market. So identifying different markets and producing as per the needs of the market. And this to some extent can relate to the low entrepreneurial drive of the collectives. I want to understand from you, what are some of the workable solutions that you have seen or that you are implementing at WFP to drive that? Over to you, Amar.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for the great question. But before going into talking about the sustainable solutions, maybe just to highlight what we see as the main challenges. By the way, I hope you can hear me well. We have a very strong storm here in Kigali, so if you can't hear me, just wave, let me know. Great. So the initial reaction is always to think that the bottlenecks are always on the farmer side. While that is true, there's also an issue upstream when you talk with the suppliers. And one of the things that we've seen, having worked in the sector here in Rwanda for the last 4 or 5 years, is that a lot of the bigger formal buyers sometimes lack the understanding of how to engage with smallholder farmers on these market linkages. And what I mean, and I think Luni mentioned it in the chat, is those linkages are important because without the market, all the other activities, all the other capacity building, all the other facilitation services are for nothing if the farmers aren't able to sell onward. So that's one thing, is for buyers, off-takers, agro-processors to understand what it is like to work with smallholder farmers and their collectives, because it's not the same relationship as, say, with a formal trader or an aggregator who, for example, can wait for payment. Things, a lot of the farmers that we work with are living kind of hand to mouth, and it's very important to respect payment terms and having quick turnarounds for payments and things. So these are some of the things that the buyer side also needs to take into account. On the farmer side, of course, not to say there are no challenges, one of the biggest things is the information asymmetry and not understanding or not having access to the information about what the market demands. And you also touched on it in your question, is not producing up to market spec. So really, where the sustainable solutions are we're not talking rocket science here. We're not talking about very complex solutions. It's about bringing the farmers and their collectives to the table with the buyers so that each side can understand what the issues and the challenges affecting each other are. And we've done this over the last 4 years here in Rwanda. And again, you ask me what most of my job is. Actually, it's helping coordinate. I would even call it almost like speed dating between farmers and buyers, where you literally just put them in the room together. The buyers go through what their market specifications are, what their contracts are like, what the payment terms, to listen to the farmers to say, well, this works for us, this doesn't work for us. We have a challenge around logistics, we have a challenge around infrastructure and post-harvest, and things like this. Taking maybe a specific example of maize, which we've been helping connect farmers to two of the biggest agro-processors here in Rwanda, one of the main challenges is drying facilities and the lack of infrastructure. But we don't like to think of this as a kind of block on the ability of these farmers to connect to these formal markets, because they can, if they're producing the right quality, extract a higher premium for the quality. And what we saw is when we started working, when one big agro-processor started working, they were rejecting more than 80% of the maize being sourced locally. Today, I had a meeting with those buyers last week. The number is less than 20%. And why is that? First of all, the farmers understand what that agro-processor wants. Two, we've been also helping innovate around business models. Everybody the tendency to think of innovation as a flashy technology or a nice phone app, but it could be a difference in process. And for a lot of the farmers in Rwanda who lack the facilities to be able to dry their maize properly, we've connected them to kind of intermediaries that are able to provide those services at scale at a low cost to the farmers and transfer the benefit back to the farmers. So again, it's about coming up with these innovative business models so that the farmers don't lose out by the lack of infrastructure, which is of course a problem in itself, but it's not a block. And there are ways around it if you think a little bit outside the box. And we've worked with private sector companies, medium scale enterprises that are being very innovative and very active in that sphere. So without taking too much time, this is it. It's really understanding what the requirements and the needs and the challenges faced by the different stakeholders and adapting to those, with the idea that eventually there is no need for an organization like FTMA to be able to do those linkages, because the long-term relationships between the buyers and the cooperatives are there. Thanks, Rachel.
Great. Thank you very much, Amar. So addressing information challenges on both ends and building the required infrastructure. Thank you. And just moving on to technology, Stephen, technology has been identified as one of the critical drivers of business sustainability. I'd like you to highlight how you've seen this play out in the case of farmer aggregation, and specifically shed more light on the performance of the e-granary platform that you have been implementing at EFF, just highlighting what are the challenges and the impact achieved so far. Over to you.
Thank you. So the e-granary is a mobile platform that uses USSD technology. And what you say is that we are aggregating farmers for input, services, and output markets. And the reason why we formed this, and I think it has been mentioned by other speakers, one was to access markets that are predictable and large, certified inputs that are delivered timely and affordable, affordable finance, risk mitigation, especially due to climate change. So we're actually offering insurance, services such as mechanization, so plowing, post-harvest issues like drying, and agriculture extension. So this meant that a lot of heavy lifting was actually needed. One, to set up a functional, accessible, and affordable mobile digital platform for farmers. We also needed to mobilize farmers on board. We have 216,000 farmers now on the system. There was need to organize the upstream value chain actors. It was important to be very clear about our value proposition, which was hinged on economies of scale. For example, we talked to off-takers. Most off-takers don't give you contracts with a price. So we were able to negotiate a contract, about a 3 or 4 year contract, with a floor price. we were able to do bulk procurement of certified inputs and deliver them. These were mainly fertilizers. We were also able to have agreements with large agrovet companies to provide seed and pesticides. These large agrovets, they aggregate for, some of these big players. And then we're able to offer credit product that bundled, a lot of the services that you are providing. So the cost of fertilizer, the cost of the seed, the cost of the insurance premium, we brought in a financial partner who actually bundled all those and provided a credit offering. We were able also to attract, because of economies of scale, mechanization. We had partners on irrigation, we have partners in drying, we have partners in logistics and so on. And then we were able to provide ag extension. And here, ag extension, it actually has helped us a lot, especially in terms of managing insurance. The fourth thing was then to have a sound business plan. You cannot run this unless you really have a sound business plan, which identifies your revenue streams, your cost streams. Of course, it's important to know that certain offerings that you give will not be paid for. For example, ag extension, it's free information, you cannot charge that. So you have to look for other value, other revenue streams. And what it means about a sound business plan is that you keep reviewing it, because every value chain is different. Like I said, the ecosystem partners are different and so forth. So what has been our learning? One, the cost of operating a digital platform can be expensive, so you have to ensure that it's affordable to the farmer. The credit model model provision, we have been revising that. At the moment, we had a challenge in terms of scaling, again, because of the internal policies of the financial partner. But now we are expanding that so that we actually have a different approach that is institutional based, which then means that you have to then start building the capacity of the farmer institutions to be credit ready. Of course, the issues of government policy. Some of the value chains are greatly affected by government policy, like maize. There are distortions. Yet COVID regulations, which affected horticulture and so many things. The issues of just volatility of some of the value chains. So you have to bear that in mind, and that was a serious experience for us, especially on the maize value chain. Digital literacy. We are introducing something. What you realize is that there are so many players providing digital literacy, and this is causing, providing digital platforms. And this is causing confusion to the farmers, and you actually need to then ensure that they understand your platform and are able to, register and so forth. The issue of reaching active user targets, for the business model to be sustainable. In as much as you have 200,000 farmers on the system, how many are active? Because those are the guys who give you money. Those are the guys who run the platform. So you have challenges because, I've mentioned some of the issues that we faced, and that has forced, fluctuation in terms of how many active farmers you have on your system. So what has been our achievement? One, ecosystem partnership. I think we have the best prices now in terms of the market. We have best off-taker, not very many because not all of them give you a contract. So you have one or two who give you the best service. We believe we have one of the best credit products now offered by a microfinance. Most of those products, for example, in our product, we're able to cover more than an acre. We're able to have flexible payments. We are giving long grace periods, especially now because of COVID. And because of the credit history that we are building for the farmer, they can actually access loans for other commodities, including, even school fees. And then small asset financing. C, logistics. By virtue of the fact that we're able to deliver certified inputs in bulk, and able to collect that has created business for some of the logistic companies. You've had arrangements like I talked about of large, agrovets, and that has actually helped in terms of uptake of that. Access to technology. Maize, we have aflatoxin, but by our arrangement, we deliver aflasafe farmers at a affordable price. We've done a service delivery model analysis of our e-granary by IDH, and it's actually said that it's actually viable. What he has proposed is that we have, we vary our product offering so that then you can actually, generate more revenue. And the last one is that it has generated interest. By virtue of the fact that we've been able to have this relationship for the last 6 seasons, we are now seeing even big banks now coming, because then we're able to show to them that farmers can actually borrow, they can actually pay, you can have a credit history, you can actually use certified inputs, they're increasing productivity. So big banks, for example, in Kenya, the Agriculture Finance Corporation, Stanbic Bank, are actually interested. And we now also expanded. We are now in Uganda, and we just started in Rwanda. We're just affected by COVID, but we're already in Uganda, and I'll try to get in touch with Amar to connect with my colleagues. So I think that for me is what I can talk about technology. Thank you.
Great, thank you very, very much, Stephen. And just a follow-on question from that. So you are a member-based organization that comprises of several cooperatives. And when you introduce the e-granary, you start offering solutions or services that have been offered by the traditional cooperatives. So how have you ensured that you bring them in so that they see you as a complementary solution provider as opposed to a competitor?
Yeah, what I said that is that we've done a service delivery model, which has looked at combining various services to the farmers without being viewed as a competitor to the farmers. So what we've done is that we've introduced what we call an agency model, yeah, so that then the cooperative actually acts like an agency of the e-granary, yeah. So I said even in terms of our credit model, we are reviewing that, and the idea is that. By reviewing that, we want to do more of institutional lending, which then now means that if a cooperative is to get a loan from the Agriculture Finance Corporation or Stanbic Foundation, then we want it to be a big loan. But now we also need to look at the institution and see what capacity do they have in terms of lending, in terms of collecting that loan. Yeah. So that's a new dynamic that it actually brings. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, you have, Stephen. Thank you very much. So I'll move on to another main challenge that has faced farmers and farmer aggregation models, and this has been mentioned, and that is access to finance. The loan book of financial institutions that has been directed to agri is very minimal, yet agri is one of the biggest contributors of GDP in our regions. I'd like to direct this question to Anil and just to find out how Samunati is solving this particular challenge, and to specifically highlight what makes a bankable business model in your view.
Thank you, Rachel, for that question. We started off our journey as lenders to the excluded markets. So the journey began from the debit credit dimension of engaging with the value chains, and specific to agriculture, the context remains pretty much similar to what we heard from the other speakers. Large number of smallholder farmers and fragmented land holding, which meant the products and services have to be customized. In addition, our understanding was also that there are a large number of tenant farmers, farmers who are doing farming, but they don't have ownership on the land. And we started looking at how do we customize products and solutions for them. So most of the formal financial institutions that were working with the smallholder farmers had the definition of farmer as the one who owns the land. And two, the products and services, or rather the loan product, customized to take care of the ease of delivery by the provider than customized to the recipient. More often than not, again, it was bullet disbursement, where you disburse the entire amount with an expectation that the farmer will invest over a period and then repay soon after harvest, whether the prices are the best at that point in time or not, was how they found it the best way to reach out to the farmer. So one important dimension during the formative years of our journey was how do we, one, expand the definition of the farmer? Can we look at farmer as the one who does farming than the farmer who owns the land? And that definition included 60% of smallholder farmers as a cohort that Samunati should be looking at, a large number of farmers, smallholder farmers. To what it also entailed is how do we look at moving away from a collateralized lending, because now we are looking at an activity-based engagement and not a collateral-based engagement. And that entailed what are the other forms of collateral that you can look at accessing. And one big collateral that we stumbled upon as we were looking at other informal lending practices, especially microfinance, is the social capital, the information about people. In the context of microfinance, it is the group guarantee that comes in, which Andy mentioned, if I'm right. In the context of agriculture, in addition to people living together and doing the same economic activity in terms of value chains, we saw a big role for the farmer producer organizations coming together, representing their members, and the fulcrum of engaging with the farmers being a member-owned, member-operated entity. So we pivoted our model from engaging with individual farmers to primarily engaging with the farmer producer organizations, and then look at how do we make the farmer producer organization add value to their members. And if I can just take back, if we can take a step back, if I am a member of a farmer producer organization, what do I want? I would want inputs provided in a timely manner at a price comparable to the market, and if it is a tad lower, that would be a bonus, and provide it without having to pay cash because I don't have money at that point in time. And if these 4 services are provided as a member by the FPO for my cultivation, I would be very happy with my association, and hence my loyalty to the organization is the highest. And if the FPO is in the business of post-harvest, procure and then sell, what do I want as a member? I would basically want the FPO to procure whatever I have produced, not grade, sort, and reject what I have no control on, because I have got what I have got from the land, and then sell in the market where I get the best rate, and if possible, hold on the sale for some time because prices are the lowest soon after harvest. And then with some primary processing, if you are able to sell, I would be able to get a little delta over what otherwise I would be getting if I were to sell soon after harvest on my own. And if these few things happen, then my association with the FPOs would become the best. My loyalty is the best. The social capital is the strongest. So in order to make that happen, we started looking at how do we build this capability to provide these services to the members at the FPO level. It's not about engaging with the farmers. If we engage with the FPO to be able to provide these requirements for their members, then the growth of the FPO is going to be significant. And that is where one dimension of our impact in terms of our engagement with the FPOs come in. We track 2 ratios: the ratio of active members to total members, and the number of new members who have taken membership. As an example, if there is a FPO with about 1,000 members and 700 of them are active, 800 of them are active, tells a story to another FPO where there are 1,000 members, but only 50 of them are active. Similar, a FPO where there is a waiting list to become members, to another FPO where there are hardly anyone who has joined in the last year or so. So how do we leverage on this social capital to be able to equip the FPO to add value was one significant driver, because given the magnitude of requirement and potential, aggregator-led approach to reach to the smallholder farmers and to build the capacity of the member-owned, member-operated entities is an important dimension that we, that we stumbled upon, and that happened after 1.5 years of our journey in Samunnati. So we pivoted to engaging with individual farmers to engaging primarily with the farmer producer organizations. What that led to is we customizing the products and solutions with the FPO as a delivery channel. So we had to build the technology, we had to build a member engagement platform, we had to build the governance platform, and some of the FPOs are also companies and they had to have secretarial compliance. So how do we equip these organizations to behave like institutions, because that is the kind of volume that they are handling. So a combination of engaging with the FPO as an entity to reach out to their members, which is a B to B2C kind of an approach, as well as building the capacity of the organization, the FPO, to be able to offer these services to the members, determined the product structure on the lending side. So most of our lending at the FPO level is a working capital term loan before the cultivation to buy inputs and stock that input or those inputs in their shop. Usually it is prior to season, and because it is an aggregated demand, they go either to a manufacturer or a large scale distributor, and our disbursement of the working capital loan goes directly to the supplier of the input, so that the end use is directly monitored and the stock would come and sit in the input shop before the season starts. The FPO would then make 3 kinds of sales, cash sales to non-members, cash sales to members, as well as credit sales to those credit-worthy members, which is a call that the FPO would make. It is their call. We don't directly lend to the farmers, but FPO makes that call. Soon after harvest, then we also have a working capital term loan, again a 3-month loan that we give. so that the FPO can procure from their members by paying cash, because the significant requirement of the members is liquidity soon after harvest. And most of the FPOs, that procure from their members also are not equipped to have working capital. So they take the produce on credit from their members on a best effort basis, then sell to the nearby aggregator. And when the aggregator pays is when they distribute to their members. So from that dimension to giving a working capital solution to the FPO to be able to procure, unlocked a lot of activity between the member and the FPO. Just as an example, one of the entities that we started working in 2016 had 1,000 members and 3 FPOs in these 1,000 members, and were doing about $5,000 of turnover in terms of market linkages. As we stand, that particular entity has about 50 FPOs, 30,000 members, and they have done about $200 million of transaction between the buy and sell. That's the kind of potential that you can unlock if you embark on a B2B2C. The last dimension that we also realized after engaging on a customized working capital solutions for the farmers is on the lending side, is how do we create assets for the farmers, especially dairy as a value chain is a significant value chain that we work with, and number of cows that the household has determines the quantity of milk that is procured. So we again gave a asset creation loan for 12 to 15 months, akin to a microfinance dairy loan for the aggregators, for the FPOs to get more cows for the households as a loan, so that the milk production in the geography as a whole went up. While all of this was happening on the finance side, one significant requirement that came in is, while finance is important, it's not sufficient. We also heard the other speaker saying market linkages is extremely important. And from a banker's perspective, market linkages brought in a huge risk mitigation to the lending. Because more often than not, the repayment does not happen because there are no market linkages or they are not able to sell. So how do we mitigate our risk while we are expanding? By bringing in market linkages, which is a need that is coming in, is what led us to build in a subsidiary for Samunnati that focuses only on market linkages. And that completed our journey of being an internal player in the value chain, not just a lender. Because here we are looking at customized solutions for specific value chains. We operate in about 54 value chains across the country, working primarily with FPOs, which meant we could geographically expand without much of a constraint. Deployed technology, we are cashless and paperless from day one, and then brought in the market linkages so that we become a full stack provider of a value chain proposition to the agriculture. And that is what we call ourselves as an internal player in the value chain. We are a partner in the value chain and not an external player in the value chain where we play one role. All of this is what led to the kind of growth that we have seen. And where we aspire, Rachel, is instead of making an individual farmer go to the retail most part of the value chain and buy the inputs at the maximum price and sell at the wholesale part of the value chain soon after harvest when the prices are not great, can we reverse it? Make them buy the inputs off season wholesale and sell their output retail with primary processing and packaging if required. Then you can stretch the delta and make markets work for smallholder farmers.
Great, thank you very much, Anil. So I'm thinking leveraging social capital and designing finance products that incorporate farmer dynamics and farmer needs. So thank you very much for that. And moving on to a key thing that keeps coming out when you're looking at a value chain approach, partnerships have to come up. And they are really crucial for sustainability of any model that is aggregating farmers. So George, I'm directing this question to you, and I just want to for you to highlight some of the key partnerships that need to be established, and what are some of the challenges that you have identified when it comes to building and managing those partnerships, because building them is one thing, but then managing and making them sustainable is another. George, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Rachel, and to fellow presenters. I think they've brought in the very crucial issues, finance, technology, and so on. So I think we're on the right track here in this conversation. But some of the key partnerships that have to be built have to be sort of looked at from two perspectives, not broken into two, but two perspectives. And that one will be in the from the value chain, which is has a subset, if you'd like to look at it that way, called the gross margins. And each of these value chains are most important because they're driven by the crop, which leads it. And the end market is the most critical part of it. The end market becomes critical because it loads additional costs and rigor into the value chain. Because, for example, if we have our exporters for our French beans who have got ISO standards, those standards trickle back downwards to the farmer, and they add rigor and additional handling costs to the farmer. So that's one side of it. And the impact of that, it creates a cost towards the extension system. So that is because that must be accounted for. You need an extra specialist in the extension system who will handle the ISO standards. Secondly, when we look at the value chains, there are a lot of legal requirements. When we are talking with the input suppliers, you'll find they have a distributor, they have a sub-agent. All these are networked through a legal requirement from an importer into the country. So if you look at any seed or any chemical that is brought into this country, it must go through a particular pathway and to reach the farmer. So that creates a very interesting element whereby if the farmer is a few kilometers away from the point of sale, it means that he has additional cost on that bag of fertilizer or on that 5 liters of chemical. So he'll spend $1 going to pick it up, another $1 to pick it up, and then after that, spend dollars on the labor. So that is the real cost of that input. So that is one of the struggles the farmers have. The next side of it is on the crop selection and varieties. We have climate issues now. How much information reaches the farmer that this is appropriate to this area? This is water, can handle water deficiency, and so on, and what the market requires. So the farmer will grow what the market requires, but not knowing that his area does not have. So basically it's information as I move on. The other side of it is looking at the gross margins. The contracts, the way they are structured right now, are complicated for the farmers, but gradually they are being distilled and broken down because the farmers are now able to form groups and help each other out and as collateral and support each other to be able to access credit. That element talks to about the public sector. What kind of laws and community management schemes do we have in place? Those kind of aspects impact our people. One of the most important things that we consider in integrating our systems in place is the challenge, as Rachel has discussed, about building and managing the partnerships. One of the biggest problems we've found and we've seen, and it's a soft problem, is aggregating the objectives of the individual organizations who are part of the partnerships. They don't say it, but that is a very critical part of it. And somebody must define that earlier on, as early as possible before you start off. And then integrating the public to the private systems. That also is a problem because in the private system, you have a return on investment outlook. You are looking at profit and loss mechanisms. You are looking at income and expenses. You might be working with a partner who has a drawdown budget and a fixed amount to spend in a particular way. So automatically, those two accounting systems will not immediately gel if you don't deliberately work towards that. Contracts and negotiations, I've mentioned that, but I'll come down towards about a cost-effective extension system. We all hear about digital systems to reduce cost of acquisition of the farmer for the organization and for the farmer to be able to communicate. There are information systems, the information flows back and forth. But these costs are still high because of a very simple reason. And I'll give it an example through like the breeding system that we have for crops. in the breeding system, the reason why we are able to get maize seed or bean seed or cassava or anything at a particular price is because a lot of the costs are taken up by the CG centers, who take up all the public side of the costs. The next part of this, the cost is taken up by the National Research Services. So again, part of the costs go in. So the commercial world now comes in and are able to do what they know best, because they are now only paying royalties back into the research system, and that reduces the costs. But if you took up all those breeding costs, which are 5 to 6 years, add them back and get the price of the cost of the seed, it would be unreachable. So that would not be possible for us at the moment. The next thing that we look at is, therefore, how does our systems work towards urbanization, towards processors? We all want to connect the farmers to the processors. And looking at it in more detail, as I've just mentioned, we are now considering that a connection to a processor is a good thing, which is a good thing, it's true. But if we are growing groundnuts, the processor will go and look for a particular standard, ISO 22000. But ISO 22000 will not allow the processor to export into the wider market. He has to go for something else called FSCC 22000. That is now what is recognized globally. So those are two costs that are loaded onto the system. How much is that cost? That's the other side of the coin. So if we consider all these factors, one of the most critical parts, in summary, of what we are doing with the partnerships is we integrate the public and private sectors. That's the critical part of it. We must do that, whether it's at the regional level, which in Kenya is called a county, whether it's at national level with the Ministry of Agriculture or any other ministry. And the second bit of it is the accounting system, which are set up to be able to accommodate both parties. The next part of that is to ensure that we are able to look at element by element to ensure that all elements can participate, elements of the gross margin can participate in the network that you have built. The reason why I say that is a potato seed must be kept in a cold environment. A maize seed or a bean seed can be stored somewhere else because they are dry. So that creates another challenge in when you're doing your efficiency of your last mile delivery calculations. Consider return on investments. The return on investments, and you'll hear a lot of people and organizations talking about impact. But the impact they're calculating is, you'll hear saying you have reached this number of farmers. That reach does not help in communicating with a finance institution. A finance institution will say, yes, you have reached them, but what is the growth of business on both ends of the value chain? At the farm gate and at the processor. He'll look at that. He'll want specific numbers, growth in figures, growth in estimates, and so on. The next side of it is the suppliers. An efficient value chain must earn money and must be profitable at every node, at every point. How much are the suppliers making? That will keep them in the partnership, and that will keep them going, and the legal systems protect them. The next bit of it is the consumer. That is, there are two consumers here. One is the farmer, the other is the market. Both of them will want to see what is useful to them, at what cost. Remember, we also have to look at the volume and value of forward market contracts. We've talked about it. You've heard the other speakers are talking about that, the forward market contracts. And then we've got contracts that are inbuilt to supply the farmers. To be able to do that, you need to set up intermediary tools to be able to make sure that the farmers can get supplied through that system. So one of the tools that is not stated, and many organizations now, we have already begun as the Syngenta Foundation to use it, It's called what you call a deed of indemnity. It's a nice legal word, but all it does is it's an insurance clause that protects the traders, both from the market side to buy and the input suppliers. And the person who is watching that is the financier who is helping conduct and finance the whole flow. So again, intermediary tools and intermediary organizations are critical. But remember, in summary, in conclusion, that when we are aggregating, you are aggregating land sizes from a half acre to 200 acres. We are aggregating services. We are getting inputs and products, name it. We are aggregating markets. We are aggregating legal systems and contracts. And last but not least, we are aggregating credit for the banks to be able to make money. And so with that, I think what we have found out and what is enjoyable about this is that we can see the results coming back through the Syngenta Foundation, because at all elements are making money. Every single person is making money in the value chain. And had it not been for various agreements, again, I would have actually shared with you some of the figures, but there's growth in that, and there's interest in a lot of the work. I mean, everybody here has talked. So I think because of time also, thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George. And you rightly outlined the need to clearly define the expectations from each partner, and also the value proposition and the ROI for each of the partner. I know we are running a bit short of time, so I'll request the next speakers to just keep it very brief. And we are going to address an issue that I didn't want to leave out, and this is around policy, and really to just get a feel of what are the enabling policies in some of the countries that are represented here, and or the policy gaps. And I'll give this opportunity to Anil. So in a minute or less, kindly do outline what policy is doing and what are the enabling policies that you've seen in India.
Yeah, so I'll be very short and brief. 3-4 things that are extremely critical to make markets work for smallholder farmers, Rachel. One is the ability to aggregate and have the ability to sell where it is best for them to sell. And one enabling legislation that has just come about is removing the requirement to sell in a particular place, but be able to sell in addition to that place wherever that you can, right? The second dimension is, how do we bring in the technology in the agri space to add value to the income levels of the farmers? And, India is witnessing a huge vibrancy in terms of the number of startups coming in agriculture, number of agtech companies coming in agriculture, to remove 2 fundamental blocks. One, access to information, and access to the channel. Both of which are critical given the numbers that we have, so that mainstream financial institutions and insurance companies can reach out to the smallholder farmer and get connected. And the mobile telephony is playing a significant role in the advisory services that are already in vogue. How do we make the electronic platforms for the post-harvest solutions for the FPOs would be a critical dimension. So the government has announced setting up of another 10,000 FPOs over the next 5 years, and has multiple schemes and policies to enable more and more community-owned, community-operated entities to come in. Where we need to, as private sector, play a role in is how do we ensure that the governance of the FPOs remains with the farmers, but the execution goes in the hands of the professionals, and that is where we need to play a significant role to make the FPOs continue to be focused on their members' welfare, but operate like well-oiled enterprises.
Thank you, Anil. And Stephen, because at the EAFF, you're representing regional interests and covering most of the countries in East Africa. Maybe you could speak from that perspective on policy and any key differences across the countries.
Yeah, so we've said before that farmers work best when they are running their own companies and running as businesses. And when you look at the current models that support that kind of thinking, the cooperatives actually come or tops. And as EFF, we did a bit of work looked at India, Japan, a bit of Europe, even around Eastern Africa. And we put together what we call an East Africa Cooperative Societies Bill that we presented through the East Africa Parliament. And it was actually passed about 2 or 3 years ago. And the whole intention was that we felt this was actually support what we call farmer collectives, but most importantly, try and improve, in terms of social development, the running and operations of cooperatives. Of course, that process has triggered a lot of other things. We've had the revision of the cooperative laws here in Kenya, in Uganda, Tanzania. Burundi didn't even have a law, and they actually used that regional law to have and put out their own law. Rwanda still had quite a progressive cooperative law. So for us, we're looking at the opportunities. We now have the ACFTA. That's beyond the East Africa community. And, regardless of ACFTA being on board, we know this region is still food deficit. A food import bill is maybe 10 billion in East Africa every year, and that's staples. We still have high post-harvest losses. Farmers are not participating in trade, and we're actually trying to see how can we take advantage of this by showing them opportunities. I mean, we have done work around import substitution. You're just looking at what comes through Dar es Salaam and Mombasa ports into this region, things that we can actually produce. But you can't produce because people are not organized, up into the regional level. Agro-processing, I think even from the East Africa community level, there's a policy on agro-processing. Every country has that. But how far are we in terms of that? Issues of credit. The reason why credit is still expensive is that people borrow from outside. We are not able to have the critical mass to borrow from outside. But if we're able to aggregate people, we can actually be able to do that. So the law provides for amalgamation of or JVs on cooperatives up into the regional level. We actually want to see how we can have a regional cooperative on maize or dairy or something. So they can actually take advantage of the whole process of regionalization or regionalism, through joint advocacy, investments, and of course, trading. I think maybe I want to say that because of time. So there's an opportunity. We're actually trying to push this. We now have a new Secretary General of East Africa Community. We actually want to see, and he's a business oriented. He was a CEO of East Africa Business Council. So we actually want to see whether we can have this pushed and ratified by the presidents, so then we can actually start operationalization and see the realities of these regional cooperatives taking shape. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And to the attendees, kindly keep posting your questions. I have a number of questions here that I'm going to get to in just a few minutes, but I'll like to invite closing remarks, particularly on opportunities that exist for the private sector and development partners. And I'm going to direct this to Andy, so you can just briefly just mention the existing or emerging opportunities for the private sector when it comes to building sustainable farmer aggregation models.
Thank you very much. The private sector can take advantage of this as a win-win. We talk about the private sector. These are the input companies, like big companies like Syngenta, like the banks. For example, in all the countries that we've worked with Syngenta in rolling out and bringing in new varieties, new products. And this has worked well in Ethiopia, Nigeria, Mali, Uganda. We have worked very well using the platform. The farmers are already mobilized, so they are able to push these new varieties, easily register them. One unique thing working with Sasakawa is we have MOUs with all the governments that we work with. So Sasakawa Africa Association becomes like an arm of government, and you can easily register products and push them to the countries. We have also seen, like, for example, the banks working with already mobilized and skilled individuals. That means the cost of operation becomes very low. You are able to get onto those groups and then work with them. We have seen work with, for example, WFP in Mali, in Ethiopia, in Nigeria, in Uganda. Currently, there's a big project in Uganda where WFP is operating agriculture and market support in northern part called Moroto. So Sasakawa is like implementing for WFP, making sure that farmers are able to produce and linking them to market. So this has been very positive. So the private sector can take advantage to introduce new products, to expand the market in a win. In so doing, they are also building the farmers. So the farmers are benefiting and the private sector is benefiting, and that brings the sustainability. Even when NGOs move out, the farmers are able to take it on, like carrying on farming as a business. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amar, your thoughts on this?
No, I think being short on time, I think Andy captured the majority of it very well. But just to say that the one big challenge that I see, and for me the challenge means an opportunity, is the now kind of rising stock of SMEs, MSMEs, in the food sector and the agriculture sector. These are the kinds of companies that are able to take, that can go down to the smallholder farmer level and be able to link to the wider food system. But the big issue is around financing. And what we need is a new approach to financing this sector. And sometimes traditional financial institutions aren't the right platform for this. So I think an investment in kind of blended finance solutions to show to the private sector and some of the formal financial institutions that actually there is a lot of money to be made in the sector and a lot of benefit to the farmers and all value chain actors, which is missing right now. And when I say missing, it's the missing middle. It's those MSMEs that are lacking the sufficient financing to be able to lift quite a huge number of farmers away from subsistence and towards farming as a business, as Andy says. The potential is there. The money is there, but the financing mechanisms and the systems are unfortunately lagging a little bit behind. So huge opportunity there. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Amar. And I'm just going to quickly go through the questions that are coming in the Q&A. So Jack from Denton TMP Systems asks, our experience has been that there is a real shortage of platforms that can connect farmers to local affordable extension services at scale, especially for sustainability related services. Is this true? And I can direct this question to Andy, since you're doing a lot when it comes to extension.
Sorry, make it a bit clear.
Okay, so the question is around the shortage of platforms that can connect farmers to local affordable extension services at scale. So is there a shortage of these, or what have you seen according to you?
Yes, there is a big shortage. I remember during my presentation, I said extension workers in sub-Saharan Africa, the extension worker ratio is between 2,500 to 3,000. What have we done? I'll always give examples of what we have done. One, I gave example of training these extension workers at university level and then rolling them out to the community. At Sasakawa, we have developed a number of models. One of them, which has been outscaled by USAID, that is the CATS, Commodity Association Trader-Trainer model. That means instead of having traditional extension workers, Sasakawa is able to train these extension workers like para-extensionists. They are able to reach. For example, one CAT works with an average of about between 15 to 20 groups and using the village agents. And within that, they are able to get down to the farmers. So through that, they are able to do input and output marketing. And then with that, we have also developed what they call the CBF model, that is the community-based facilitators. These are private guys who are trained within the community, they stay within the community, and they are able to work within those same communities, extending agricultural knowledge and information systems. We have got the community savings for investment model, where farmers are able to do their own savings and reinvest those savings into agribusiness. And that has enabled farmers access agricultural information, both across the whole value chain. We have got other models, we call them the MAP model adoption plots, where these farmers are trained. And when they want to scale out, they are able to pick out the best technologies and then implement them at a very high scale. And Sasakawa is only helping them with the trainings. So all these models, if you check on the Sasakawa website, we have them, the farmer learning platforms where farmers are trained using para-extension workers. They are able to reach the lowest farmer level. With that, we are able to see extension information reaching down to the lowest level, even using limited access of like what we call the professional extension workers who are paid by government. These extension workers are able to work, and we do that, encourage them to do that on a commission basis. And now we have rolled out the e-extension, where we have provided tablets, we have provided phones in all these countries where we operate. And that cuts the cost of production, the cost of doing business, and farmers are able to make money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. And I've seen the chat box was very active with the speakers responding to some of the questions. So great, thank you, everyone, and thank you to my speakers for responding to those questions. So feel free to connect to any of the speakers here. They are on Brella if you'd like, and if you'd like a direct connection, you can also reach out to us and we can make that direct connection. But we at Intellecap are also working to build sustainable aggregation models. And of course, we can only do this with the help of all the partners that are already working there. So we look forward to more opportunities coming forward and more actionable steps. As I have mentioned, there's a huge challenge that we need to address if we are to be able to feed the 10 billion people by 2050 as per the estimates. So thank you so much, my distinguished panelists, for the insights, and thank you very much for everyone who has joined us today. Enjoy the rest of day 2 of SunCal, and wishing you a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm humbled
Thanks,
to
everyone.
participate. I hope we shall participate again. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
And to everyone, feel free to reach out if there's any work you want to do with FTMA in the region or with WFP in Rwanda. Happy to connect. Thank you.
Yeah. Get in touch with me on our website. Check on our website if you have time, please. There's a lot of information there. Thank you very much.